That, when you say hearing it, it reminds me of my favorite VA story. I got my honorable discharge in 1963, and I applied for the GI Bill because shortly after that, I got accepted at the doctorate program at Brown. And they said because I went in the reserves after being on active duty, that I couldn't get any benefits. And since then, in the last 10, 15 years, I've run into a half a dozen other people who got their VA benefits. And we have an incredible, how many veterans do we have in this room? A few hands. If you guys haven't redone your status, do me a favor, go back and do it, because we have probably the best veteran service officer that ever existed in Josie. So the bottom line there is I applied for VA benefits and didn't get them back in the 60s. I dropped out of the doctorate program, but my life took some strange turns, so I'm here anyhow. But I finally got approved in 2020 for my VA benefits. And when they tested me, because I spent some time around diesel engines in the Coast Guard, they found out I was more deaf than I want to acknowledge, and commenting on myself. They did buy me a hearing aid, but I tend not to use it too often. But so that's my VA story. Well, first of all, if anyone knows me, it's rare that I could do anything in less than 10 minutes. However, I did it today. Let me just say that I'll tell you a little bit about me, and I'll just open it up for whether questions you want to ask, and I'm happy to do that. I'll just tell you a little bit about my history. I was born in New York City, in the Bronx. I don't know if there's any Yankee fans or old Giant fans around. Mets. See, you're too young. Yeah, right.
Go Giants.
When I was a kid, it was the Giants, the Yankees, and the Dodgers. That's what baseball was all about. But we were poor. I didn't know it. My mom was a single parent before it was really acceptable to be a single parent. We lived with my grandparents in their one-bedroom apartment on the ground floor in the Bronx. I don't think I slept in a bed till I was 10. They used to put me asleep on the bottom of that bed and then carry me in and put me in a wing chair. And it wasn't quite as big and ugly as I am today, so it was easy to do that. And I finally got a folding bed, I think, when I was about 10 years old. However, we had two things that I grew up with which framed my life. And I don't sleep a lot, so I do a lot of thinking, and the wheels are always going in my head at night. And I have some regrets. But two things that impacted me as a youngster. I was about 4.5 years old when the war ended. And we were in the Bronx, so I could look 50 feet across the street, and there were towering buildings. And I remember all the little white flags with gold stars in them that hung in the windows. I talked about that once in a Veterans Day speech. And everyone was for a husband, wife, son, daughter that didn't come back from the war. When I was a youngster, if we saw someone in uniform, we saluted them. When I was a youngster, if the flag touched the ground, we picked it up and kissed it. I remember with Veterans Day coming up, being in the elementary school, and you ready for this, in New York City, actually praying in the classroom, saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and we sang My Country 'Tis of Thee because the Star Spangled Banner was too hard for kids to sing. So that sort of framed my life to a large degree. My mother was tougher than any drill instructor I ever had to deal with. Nothing in my life that I did ever met her standards. And the neatest thing was when I was sworn in to the county commission, Mom lived in Sarasota for 40 some odd years, and that's why I moved here. And some of you, in fact, you may have been there at my swearing in way back then. And because I had a lot of support from the Tea Party back in those days. But at any rate, after she held the Bible when they swore me in, and then I walked her the two or three steps back to her seat. She was 92 years old. And sharp as a tack, I could tell you stories all day long, scary sharp. And I put her down and kissed her on the cheek. She grabbed my head and she says, "You know, I'm very proud of you." I said, Mom, I was like 68, 69 years old. I said, I'm almost 70 years old. I was the first one in our family to go to college. I got 2 college degrees. I've been working since I'm 7 years old. I was elected a town councilman. I was elected a state representative. I was elected a state senator. I ran for lieutenant governor. And I said, I ran my own business for 30 years. I've been involved, blah, blah. And I said, and now you tell me you're proud of me. And I actually took that time to say it to her with 250 people in the room. And she says, well, I always thought you could do better. So God bless her. And you know, I know she's keeping an eye on me every day, so I try not to jaywalk. I try not to talk with my mouth full, use the wrong fork and all that stuff. So, but at any rate, I was a city kid in New York, and it seemed like as I was taking a little bit longer to get out of high school because sports were more important than academics, it seemed like it might be a good idea to enlist in the service. And the thought of going to college was never there because there's no way I would have been able to pay for it. So at any rate, I went down, and this was a little bit of an eye-opener for me. I went down, I was only 17, I was in my end of school. My mom had to go with me. And I went down, I took the military entrance exam. I forget the acronym we used for that, but I had to take the exam. A few weeks later, they called me back, said, come on, and I wanted to go in the Air Force. Every kid in the 50s wanted to fly a jet plane. That's what I wanted to do. So at any rate, long story very short, he calls up and I said, did I do okay? So yeah, he says, you're fine. You have to come down with your mother and sign the papers and all that stuff. So I said, okay. So my mom and I came down there, so I applied enough, and I said, I did okay to get in the Air Force? He said, young man, he said, you did so well. He said, you can get in any branch of the service. You could even be in the United States Coast Guard. In all honesty, I had never heard of the United States Coast Guard in the Bronx in New York. And my mother said, the Coast Guard? I said, yeah, but I want to be in the Air Force, Mom. She says, no, you want to be in the Coast Guard. Long story short, and I Googled the guy, she had a crush on an actor that played Don Winslow of the U.S. Coast Guard. And I actually looked it up in serials. All right, so I went in the Coast Guard. Probably one of the things that really changed my life significantly, and I think about it, and those of you in the service know it, is when I raised my right hand and I took that solemn oath to defend the Constitution of this great nation and this country and to protect our liberty and for what we're all about with my life. And it's funny, I was talking to one of my, I have 3 boys and a daughter. I was talking to one of the boys the other day. By the way, they've all been knocked off of Facebook, so they were in an elite group. You know, that made an impression, and we were talking about that. And I will share with you, I am not a fan of our president. I did everything I could to get Mr. Trump elected. I probably put up 500-600 signs, some friends of mine. We were talking about that oath. And Biden had me embarrassed for the first time in my life to be an American. And I went through a real, I had to go through a whole process there because the way we dealt with Afghanistan, every veteran I know was embarrassed and humiliated. Anyway, the bottom line of that, and I still keep processing it, my son said, would you take a bullet for the president? And I said, yes, because that's what you do. Anyway, what I've did after that, and I can share the regret at some point, but I sort of dedicated my life to trying to make this place a little bit better. And this place I'm talking about is this third rock from the sun that we call Earth. And these great United States of America, which is an experiment in freedom, liberty, and justice, which has not been matched in the history of this planet. And I've tried to do what I could do to make this place a little bit better. And so I got involved in a lot of community things throughout my life. I was very involved in stuff up in Rhode Island. I first ran for a town councilman in '78, and I was elected, and subsequently I ran for state representative, ran for state senator, and we knew it was, I don't want to say an upstream battle, but I did run for lieutenant governor as a Republican of Rhode Island. When I ran for office there, the state was close to 80% Democrat, and they still had the master lever. Do any of you guys know what the master lever is or was? That's where they had Democrat and Republican on the top, and if you put the KISS next to the Democrat, every one of them got the vote. They did away with it a few years ago, but they had it when I was there, and they told me how great we did. I got 29% of the vote. I think the gubernatorial candidate got 27 to 28, but it was an interesting experience. I moved to Florida. My dad was living with me, and the boys were out of the house on their own. I had my own real estate and development company, and Dad passed away. And I didn't grow up with my father around. We actually got together when I was at basic training down in Cape May, New Jersey, and the cool thing is we became friends. My father lived with me, and when he passed away, the house was empty. The boys weren't there. My mom was in Florida. And I made up my mind to come back to Port Charlotte. I was first here in the 60s. My former in-laws had one of those little houses that I think sold for $9,000, which is what, like $250 now? out off of Midway. Anyway, that's my background. I'll tell you the thing I'm proudest of and the thing I feel worse about. And those guys that you know me, I'm very candid, I'm absurdly honest. And if there's some reason I won't tell you something, I won't say it. But you're going to hear it like it is. I'm proud of my work ethic because at 80 years old, I've never found anyone that can match it. I am the only one in the history of the state of Rhode Island to have served as a town councilman and never missed a vote or a session. But I'm in the history books, and I've got a couple of copies of the state manual at home. I'm the only one that ever served in the state legislature in either chamber, let alone both. I never missed a session. I never missed a vote. There were a couple days I was at some meetings here, particularly after I had some emergency surgery. The doctor has never spoken to me since. I left the hospital 10 days early because I had 5 proclamations to do Memorial Day weekend. And I was a pale color of green at the time. And I do regret that, because 3 months later I had to go in and they wrapped my stomach in mesh because I got 5 hernias. So that's the thing I'm proudest of, my work ethic and my dedication to try and do the best I can. The regret, and I don't think I've ever said this publicly before, the regret is I put taking that oath and my elected service ahead of my family at times. Missing my kids' graduation from college, missing family reunions. I blamed my second wife for having an affair. The reality is I was out working every night. Speaking of affairs, I'm a late bloomer. It took me to get into my 70s to have my first affair. But at any rate, I'm dedicated to do what I can with every bit of energy and experience that I have to make Charlotte County a better place for all of us. I'm going to stop in a minute or two. I do want to share with you, we have 5 commissioners on our board. If you ever watch the meetings, I obviously don't agree with them all the time. But I will tell you this, for whatever it's worth, we have what is considered the best board of county commissioners in the state of Florida. People come up to us all the time. There is no one on the board that is dumb. There is no one on the board that doesn't have some decent experience. Probably Chris Constance, who's the doctor, had the least experience. But Chris is a bright guy and a quick study, and he gets stuff right away. So I think that's the reality of it. There were 2 of them that called me the Henry Kissinger on the board because as verbal as I am, as much as I talk, the people who watch the meeting say I always talk last and I talk the least, and I try to pull us together.
taxes are high because of spending. So my question is, what motion would you make as a commissioner to make big cuts in spending and lowering taxes so people struggling from government shutdowns can have a better chance of surviving?
Well, where would you want to start? No, hold it. Where do you want to start with? Let's say, okay, maybe we should get rid of the fire department first, and then get rid of the sheriff's department, and get rid of code enforcement. But then what happens when the person, you know, next to you builds something 15 feet high, and
So
I don't think so.
Nobody
No, I
said
don't
get
think
rid of.
Yeah, right.
I didn't say that at all.
I said I mean, that's the big straw man argument of all time. Well, we're going to get rid of. Nobody said get rid of. Where are you going to cut it back? I bet I could take that budget tomorrow and whack.
There are places administratively that I see throughout the county where I think we can make cuts, frankly.
I mean,
Yes.
I think we certainly.
But you know, if we didn't have code enforcement, how would that affect your industry? Would it be better?
I don't
know.
build that many houses, but
Yeah.
I think you never really answered the question about the guy that got thousands of dollars in fines for a flat tire.
Yeah,
that kind of code enforcement?
That seems bizarre to me.
Yeah, my grass is this high, it should be this high. Somebody's going around giving people tickets for that. I'm sure that employee is getting, he probably makes $70,000 a year plus benefits, plus cost of hiring. That's $100 grand. That's 7 parades.
What price freedom?
I mean, nobody said get rid of. He said cut. What's going to happen if the sales tax doesn't pass the next time? Do you have a contingency plan for that? Or
I
is it just
think,
to raise the millage rate?
you know, and again, it's the voters that may ultimately make the decision on the sales tax, not the commission.
But you have a budget, and you have to know that money's either coming or it's not. I assume you should not count on it.
Well, I think one of the things, I'm going to answer your question. You would see less things being planned for and done down the road, including roads and stuff like that. You know, for example, I think most of you know that at some point Edgewater will be extended right up to Flamingo, and you know it's going to go past Midway where it is now. It's going to happen. The reality is Charlotte County wasn't designed for the type of population and traffic we have now. There's a mess down around the bridge. It's dangerous. We've tried and been looking at how as you're heading north and come off the bridge up by Melbourne. You know, that's dangerous. It's a mess.
Is that 1% tax earmarked for roads? Is it special?
It's a whole bunch of projects which came through. Some of the projects came through the citizens group that went on, and some of that money is in the past has gone to schools, it's gone to libraries, it's gone to parks, it's gone to a mess of what?
Sailing clubs and
sailing club. I mean, I'm a sailor. I love to sail, but that is
well by building that facility. You know, everyone says, hey, you know, when you talk to people, they want the amenities, but you know, well, all right, but. You know, I said to someone just recently, because you see the stuff on TV, if I was 50 years younger, I probably would go up there in Alaska and try living that way. It would be an interesting experience. But you know,
changes to Alaska if we didn't have a race stadium. It wouldn't be Alaska.
So how much could you cut if you had to? 2%, 3%?
I don't know.
5%?
I don't know. And again, you know, each of us make our recommendations. Each of us make have our own opinion. The reality is I'm only 20% of the decision, and we all voice our opinions. I will share that with you.
Because every time my taxes go up, I have to figure out how to cut this year $535 out of my personal budget.
The state
I don't get the
forced
same luxury
the commissioners to cut about 20%.
I'm sorry?
The state forced, not you, but before you, the commissioners to cut like 20%. And the amenities didn't go away, we didn't become Alaska, and we didn't all die. 20%, just like that.
We've spent the last 10, 12 years doing a lot of catching up on stuff that wasn't done too. You know, so it's not going to be perfect. You know.
I mean, the downside of not having district single voting. What's the downside of that?
It means that there's a lot of people you have to deal with and interact with, because it would mean, if we had what you wanted, if we had what you wanted, I wouldn't be talking to you, because I'd only be talking to those 3 or 4 people over there, because that's where I lived and who I represented.
Well, you would be talking to me, because I know where you live.
But you know what I'm saying. And,
Well, we're talking about community. So the larger it is, the less the community. If you,
I agree with that. You're right on that. However, and this is a big county, but the county is a community. We really are. We have our little subdivisions, whether it's Murdoch or it's El Jabin or it's PGI or whatever, but we are, in essence, the county is a community. And the reality is, when one area has to compete, that's what I faced. And these guys know it. Yeah, you saw it. When I got on the board, we were competitive, and every once in a while I see us come back. It was West County against Punta Gorda. It's all about Charlotte County. And what I worked real hard to do was to try and pull us together. And that's what we talked about with the airport. And I'll tell you this, I think the county has a great relationship with the airport, and we have a decent relationship with the city of Punta Gorda.
You realize the rest of the state, every place else is, the entire rest of the state, not at the county level, is single districts. You understand?
I wasn't aware.
Because it's not like I get to go. It's not like they nominate Anthony Sabatini in Orlando and I get to vote for him. It's his district. So where's your cutoff for single districts? Because I'm in your district, and I don't believe you represent me as well, because you also have to represent the other 4 districts in the county. You can't possibly have the same attention to detail as you would otherwise if you were a member of a single district.
I think that's
the other side, right?
Yeah. No, that's excellent. That's a good point. That's the other side. But you have to balance that out, Jim. You have to balance that out against what I've seen the dollar figure be, which gets absurd. But I think you make a good point. That is the other side. It makes sense. But and you know what any of us can do. We can try our best to the best of our ability. And that's what I try. And let me tell you, and I'll admit it, on a given day I can mess up a soup sandwich. But I try.
Do you think that's a decision that the county commissioners themselves should even be involved in?
I don't think we are directly, because I think that comes from the community.
Certainly, well, you appoint people to the charter review board, and you can appoint people that.
We ask people to volunteer for it, and actually this year we didn't have enough volunteers. And well, that's because you bring your camera in. But David, I've appointed you things before. I know I have, and I would again.
appointed me to anything.
Since you've been here, you were on the board or something a couple of years back. You were. Yeah, yeah.
Join the club.
Yeah. But I think it's the diversity that that benefits the county, frankly.
If it would have been advertised, I probably would have at least applied, whether I got picked or not. But I didn't see it.
Hold on.
I didn't see it anyway.
Let me tell you this, and this amazes me, particularly because I've been so involved with the Gaines Park. But do you guys realize, and it's been here for 10 years, that about 35% of Charlotte County does not know we have a replica of the Vietnam Wall here in the county? Does that surprise anyone?
90% of them don't even know we have a charter.
Yeah, well, there you go. So you guys get involved, and we announce everything. It's in the paper, it's on television. We do everything we possibly can to make sure that people know what's going on. And and sometimes people can find out about it, sometimes they don't. When there's going to be any kind of zoning stuff, we mail out 1,000 feet around, and we try and let people know. But we don't do anything in secret. We don't talk to each other in private. Everything that you see is out there. And I think we encourage the public to get involved. We have, our open comments at the commission meetings, and we solicit and accept input. And again, as I say, it's not perfect, but I think we work real hard to make it as open as we possibly can.
question is, I just learned of an ordinance that was somehow passed through an attorney, from what I understand, and I could be off here, but that we cannot, or that public officials cannot be videotaped in public offices or government offices. Do you know any public
Was
buildings?
that Punta Gorda? I don't
No,
think we.
that's Charlotte County.
Well, I'll say this, and I don't think anyone here that knows me, I have never ever refused to have anyone, to meet with anyone or talk to anyone ever. We have some commissioners that won't talk to people or, will, but, I'm happy to sit down.
You're
because,
accessible.
well, I can still learn, and, and I'd like to think that every day I pick up a little something here or there. So, I'm happy and I'm willing to do that to whatever degree I can.
But you don't know about this ordinance I'm talking about.
It's not ringing a bell, and I know there's been controversy. I stopped using those four-letter words when I was in the service because they didn't do any good. However, I'm a constitutionalist, and I may think that it's not in good taste, or I may think that it's rude, but you can do that if you want to. And if I don't like to hear it, well, we don't have to hang out together. So that's your constitutional right, because we have freedom of speech, and that's. Excuse me, yes,
She's
sir.
not talking about the swearing, she's talking about you banned filming a public official in a public place, in a government office. You guys banned, you didn't even pass it. She just put it in there. And now you're trespassing everybody just because they're recording you in a government building? I've been trespassed so many times I've lost count.
I've never been part of anything like that personally, and I've sat down with some people whose names are in the paper, and they've taped it, and we've talked, and I haven't had a problem with that. You do forget, when you're at a meeting, you do forget that the TV's on, and I don't watch the commission meetings unless I'm looking for a particular, I say, boy, did I really say that dumb thing that I said at the last meeting? Because it does happen, but because we're all human. And no, I think that we're accessible, we're open. I don't even open my own mail. Anything that happens that I get is public. We do work, honestly, we do work hard to be transparent. And if you're not involved, I think sometimes people think there's smoke-filled rooms and things going on in the back room, and I would tell you if they are, I don't know about them because I've never been part of them, and I wouldn't be. And I have never, the closest I came to breaking the Sunshine Law was when I threw Skidmore out of my office when he sort of was arguing with me over an issue that I wouldn't discuss with him because it was a sunshine violation. He started swearing and yelling, and I was in a little better shape 10 years ago, what he was too, and I literally threw him out of my office. And we worked real hard to do it. Bob started, when you talk about the sunshine thing, it's ridiculous, it really is, because I can't have a cup of coffee with a commissioner, and the joke is, well, somebody says, hey, it's a nice day, we do vote on weather when there's a hurricane. So it is, I can see all the paper stuff, but I should be able to talk to someone. And I would tell you, I think I'd be a lot more effective if I could, because, sometimes you can talk to people and it's hard. I don't ever want to embarrass someone. I try to avoid that when we're talking about issues. And sometimes there are things you would say in private you wouldn't say publicly. So, but we're very transparent. We're out there. There's nothing secret happening. If it is, it shows how dumb I am or I don't know about it.
Well, but just to follow up with what you're saying, if you're really transparent, why can't you be videotaped in a public building?
Let me tell you, if you give me a chance to do my hair, and you can come in anytime, as long as I don't break your camera, you're welcome. So.
I had other questions, but I'm going to follow up on that one instead. And hopefully we'll go around because I know someone didn't get in back there. But I couldn't get to you to talk to you if I had a camera with me. Okay, I walk in the door, I'm immediately trespassed for a year. Okay. Yep. I went in to get a public record, and I emailed you and all the commissioners about this. I spoke before you. I went in to get a public record. The lawyer himself, the county lawyer, said I was a perfect gentleman. And then the sheriff, the deputy, came up and filed a false report and said that I was dangerous and all that other stuff. So that's unconstitutional.
Yeah, but you and I have said it, and I've seen Tim and Michael. They video the stuff all the time. How come they let them do it?
Well, it's arbitrary. That's illegal too.
Yeah, I sort of remember that issue about a year and a half ago. Yeah.
Still goes.
Yeah.
It happens just
So
every
I'm
other
gonna
month.
tell you this, when Mike Zozano comes up and he speaks, he videotapes, so does Tim.
In the chambers, it's legal.
Public meeting, but not anywhere walking in or anything else.
Okay.
And then you get a false police report.
Okay, let me,
You have no proof.
the other, to get back to where you were, part, what we were, and I wasn't witness to any of this, but what was shared with us about this situation is that some people have come in on occasions, and they're not just in the background doing it, they're interrupting the county workers, and this is what we were told, from keeping them from doing their job. I don't know if that's true, I don't know if it's not true. There's some situations where I could see it might be true or it might not, I don't know. But that's one of the things that
So
I
you
heard
do know
about
that
that.
this is happening then? Because I thought I heard you say you had no idea what I was talking about.
Well, I didn't follow that, yeah, I didn't know, it sounded like something happened recently, you know, but I know that we've heard of situations where people come in and have tried to do some stuff which they say has kept people from doing their job. If there's some validity in there, there's probably some. I don't know to what extent or how real it isn't. You know, and I've had some situations which happened. One bothered me a little bit, and it's not important who it was. This was about 4 or 5 years ago. Someone was coming up to see me with, I think it was their granddaughter, like 6, 7-year-old, and someone had a sign outside that said Brandon on it. And the guy came up and he was all upset, and I went downstairs and I spoke to the person with this, and I said, you know, I'm a constitutionalist. I said, but you got a 6, 7-year-old kid in here. And I wasn't convincing, and he didn't appreciate the things that I said about being sort of decent and real life. And he says, well, in his comments, well, tell her to look the other way. You know, so I was a little disappointed, but that's his right to do that. You know, and hey, I took an oath to swear that he has that right to protect him, to have that right.
Really one question in 2 parts, all right? You know, you've mentioned, you know, taking your oath to the Constitution a number of times in the beginning here. For what reason are governments instituted, and how does anything that you've talked about here affect that specific purpose?
I don't follow, I don't get the question.
Oh, the Constitution that you repeatedly talked about your oath to, you know, the founders of this country spoke specifically to the reason that governments are instituted amongst men. And, I mean, if there's a specific purpose for government to exist, nothing that I've heard here tonight addresses any of those reasons that governments are supposed to exist.
So if we have no government, where is the rule of order?
For what purposes are governments instituted amongst men?
I don't know.
It's in the Declaration of Independence.
In my mind, I think it's to help guarantee and ensure our liberty and our freedom and our rights as defined in the Bill of Rights.
According to the Declaration of Independence, governments are instituted amongst men to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, basically.
It was originally the pursuit of property, by the way.
And
Anyway.
I'm aware of that. There was
I agree.
also originally a bunch of things about anti-slavery in there that were taken out to get the southern states to agree. So, I mean, that's a whole different can of worms. But, I mean, if those are the purposes for which governments are instituted, how does anything that's been talked about tonight protect anybody's right to anything?
It doesn't, steps on their rights.
Well, I'm not sure how I can answer that. You know, I don't think there's a quote perfect government. From the little bit of history that I've read and my life experience and a little bit of traveling, you know, we're an experiment in progress. I don't think there's been a better one. I think we ain't perfect. But it's because we can all get involved and we can voice how we feel and share our opinions that we're going to keep tweaking this thing and hopefully making it better. You know, in my mind, because of my political feelings, and if I want to use right and left, you know, I see it being better more to the right than to the left. That's a personal feeling. But you know, I think that's what we're doing tonight and what we do at our meetings and what happens in this country, you know, in reality, is where it shows that it works. Because there are places where you couldn't sit around a room and have each one of us express a different opinion. You'd be locked up, thrown away in the key, or you'd use your hand or your arm or your leg, or, you know, whatever happens, you know. So, as I say, we ain't perfect. But in my mind, there's been nothing better, and we're so blessed. Literally, I believe I am blessed to be here in these great United States of America. And yeah, I'm not a fan of his, but because of that oath I took in the service, I probably would take a bullet for him, because he is our president. He's an embarrassment, but he's our president.
Mr. Deutsch, at the last meeting, the county commission decided to use a loophole to raise impact fees beyond what the state of Florida allows. At the same meeting, the county commission decided to spend $15,000 of taxpayer money on a parade. One, do you see the disconnect in those two things? And two, in a county screaming for affordable housing, you're a former developer, you know businesses don't pay impact fees, homeowners pay impact fees. How do you reconcile those things?
Okay, first of all, let me tell you, we consider ourselves Florida's premier veteran-friendly community. We have 28,000 veterans in this community. Part of the reason I got involved with the Gaines Park, and I'll take responsibility for that, and it's a public-private partnership because I had the idea in the middle of the night. I think we owe it to our youngsters to help them become aware and know that freedom isn't free, that we are so blessed to be here in this great nation, that they have to understand that the men and women in uniform that gave their arms, legs, their lives, and whatever to provide the freedom that we take for granted, in the arrogance that I see in some of our young people, which frustrates me today because they don't know what I'm saying is important. And yes, and it wasn't cash, it's sort of in-kind contribution.
50 cents a veteran.
Yeah, what I'm saying, it wasn't like the cash, it's sort of an in-kind where they're on duty and it is $1, it's made.
It's money coming out of the county coffers.
And, you know, so, well, no, there is no, I'd have to go over the budget figures with you. The figure was 15 grand, it was in-kind contributions to have a Charlotte County parade to honor our veterans. I'm very supportive and comfortable with that. It wasn't a direct expenditure, again, it was in kind, I support that. And I will support that forever because part of what we're doing with the William R. Gaines Junior Veterans Memorial Park, I'm trying to create, part of it's going to be ultimately to develop an endowment fund, but we're trying to create a legacy for our children and grandchildren that they know about the real history of this country, that they know how they're, you know, why they're able to be free and be in this great nation and benefit from what they do. On the housing issue, here's the problem with housing, and then I'll talk about the impact fees if I may. Here's the problem with housing. And I was a tiny developer, I did two families, you know, I did one fourplex. Excuse me. The problem with subsidizing, with housing, excuse me, the problem with housing, you cannot provide, quote, affordable workforce, low income, whatever label you want to say, you can't provide housing at a reasonable price for someone that doesn't make a lot of money without a subsidy. You can't do it. Now, when I was a kid, they had the public housing projects. I had a lot of friends that lived in the projects. And in fact, it would blow my mind, they would leave the lights on. Because I was always taught to turn the light off. The electric was included in their rent. But you cannot build reasonably priced housing without some kind of subsidy. And we're in a vicious cycle here, because primarily the workforce that we have, the skilled workforce that we have is over 55, 60 years of age. And the problem is, we can't bring workers in here because they don't have any place to live. And there aren't enough people living here that want to go out and get a skilled job, so we find ourselves caught in the cycle. So the only way you're going to get housing is if there is a subsidy. Section 8, I thought was a good program because what it did, it took the government out of building slums for the future when they were building the big housing projects. And I was surrounded with them in New York, you know, they were all over the place. So it got the private sector involved. But that's the biggest problem with housing.
We're talking about two different things.
Oh, you want to follow?
Before a builder or developer turns the first bit of dirt, do you know what it costs? $20,000 in permits and impact fees. Now, I don't pay that.
No.
I just go to my line.
The buyer pays it.
You better believe it. And they don't just pay for it, they pay it plus my margin. Because I just put the expenses on the line and boom, there it is, plus 25%.
Let me give you the pro and con on impact fees. And my problem with the impact fees, and I was opposed to the impact fees, and I voted several times to keep them down because I wanted to encourage the building industry, and very frankly, they endorsed me the last couple of elections because they felt I was supportive of where they were at. In fact, I was at the builders' dinner the other night. The problem is that the state decided that they wanted to tell the county what to do. And I think we're ready to increase the impact fees a little bit, but I was opposed. But the arguments that I got for people that wanted more impact fees was, hey, we've been here and paying the taxes. We paid for that library. We paid for that school. We paid for those roads. We paid money for that park. These people come in and take advantage of it, so they ought to chip in. That's, as you know, that's the concept. And there are two sides to it. I think we're gonna have an increase. I think it's gonna be moderate. We haven't gone up much because we've kept it very low. And very frankly, and my two opponents, by the way, are attacking me for that because of the impact fee thing. They think they should be the max. I don't. I think that I'm in favor of moderating, bring them up a little bit because we've got to take care of the roads. We've got to take care of those things. And there is an argument on both sides.
Taxes right now to take care of the road. We all pay it.
And I live out in the Ranchettes, and fairly new to the area, just moved down here and purchased property several years ago, and we're now anticipating building. And understand the discussions going on dealing with the impact fees. And the upend possibility numbers I'm hearing are almost tripling what the current amount would be for me to build a new home. And it seems very, very large. Recently, the county moved away from the ranchettes and supporting roads, drainage, and other things in that area. And it's a hotly contested issue in some people's minds. And in looking at that, taxes are shared. We share gas taxes to improve roads and those kind of things. With the county moving away from the ranchettes, that's going to impact us in a great way with additional building fees. That money will no longer come back to be shared with the ranchettes. So, you know, yeah, we may pay for a library or whatever those, I'm not sure what those funds go for in the county's expenditures, but it would look to me like we're going to be taxed with fees that are increasing that we will not have access to share in. And could you clarify that and what your position is?
Part of the problem we have with we tried to work with, I don't know if you know the history of it, we tried to work with the Ranchettes and do what the folks in the community wanted. And we said we'd help put in the drainage, we'd help put in the roads, we'd help put in what we needed there, particularly to get the kids on the buses and off and be safe. And the frustration we had, and we spent years doing it, we said we'll do whatever the neighborhood wants, get together, make your decision, let us know what you want, we'll work with you. The people in the community could not agree, ever. And so what we were doing, we were gonna come in and do a road, and I'll look at you five guys over there, and you said, okay, I'm happy to let you, put it in front of my house. And you said, okay, I'll do it. You said no, you said yes, and he said no. And so there was no way like we could make a drainage improvement because two people didn't want to do it. And should we use eminent domain? I was opposed to it. I said, gee whiz, they're all neighbors. Let them compromise, let them work it out so we can make something happen there. The discussions we've had on the impact fees, I'm gonna segue into that question now on the impact fees. And, the impact fees are probably, they're not gonna go to schools, they're not gonna go to libraries, they're probably gonna go primarily it's looking like we're gonna make transportation a priority to do the roads. We have to put sidewalks in that I think are dumb in some cases. But the state says, well, you gotta have a sidewalk within 2.5, 3 miles of every school, we won't give you your school aid money. Oh, and by the way, the county has to come up with the money to pay the sidewalks, but you gotta put them in, so that's that end of it. It's frustrating to me, but the biggest frustration is, and talk to some of your neighbors, and you're gonna find some that are polka dot and some that are striped, and they can't get together and work it out. And I think most of us on the board would like to have worked something out that most people would agree with, and that's my frustration. And I hate to come and say, hey, you have to do this, you have to do that. I'd like to say, what do you guys want to do, and how can we work with you?
Follow.
Two parts of this. One deals with, again, collecting the funds, but not participating in the usage of that. Would like an answer on that. Part two deals with, and I don't want to get in an argument about this, but looking at the legal documents from how Vermont put that development together. And the legal documents, if you read them, as opposed to the decision made by the county attorney, contradict what would be permitted for drainage management, those kind of things, not even talking about roads, which is another issue, dealing with specifications that were long ago approved by the state level, but never adopted or even recognized by the department that handles the roads. And it was contentious. So it's a situation where I don't think it's all the neighbors not getting together. I think there's a lot at the county level, I think, that could have been remediated personally from reading the documents and some of the meetings that had gotten together and what documents came out. Can you answer that as far as developing that further rather than it's just neighbor to neighbor not agreeing?
Because of my background experience as a city and town planner, what I had done in community development, housing and all that stuff, there was only two things I knew nothing about, absolutely nothing about when I took this job. One was MSBUs. I had no clue. And I said at a commission meeting about 10 years ago, it was right after Doherty got elected. I said, that must have been invented by a madman on his day off. And Doherty said, that was my idea when I worked for the county, I did that. But in fairness to Ken, in retrospect, because we had so many lots, and we had no way of trying to maintain the streets and do it, the MSVU idea was that if you did something in your neighborhood, you guys would chip in and those improvements would be made there and you would get the benefit from it. And he explains it better than I do, but it made a little bit of sense with me that I had, and again, as a city and town planner and working in a whole bunch of places, I had never heard of anything like that before. But I understand, and basically, at some point, here's a prediction for you young folks that'll be around in 20 years from now. About 20 years down the road, we won't have any more MSBUs. Because when we're built out to the 50 or 60% rate, everything will be ad valorem as it is in other communities. And then you know that everything, then everything should be done equally. I'd have to go back and check and see what proportion of those overall funds you might lose. But, but I can't give you an answer off the top of my head. I understand it's a concept, and, but my problem is, and we spent years, and we said, if you want to go ahead and do this, we'll work with you, we'll do it, we'll help raise the money, we'll do the work. And we could never get a consensus from the group, and we got frustrated, and our staff got frustrated, and our staff isn't perfect. There's almost 1,400, which is what they had back in 2010, well, 28 before they fired 1,000. But, we're growing, and overall, very frankly, with very few exceptions, I think we have a good staff overall. There are things that bother me about this working from home, and I don't want to get into that, because I didn't miss a day in my office. I was there every single day, and so was my assistant, all through the virus thing, but, whatever. And they told me I was the most vulnerable person in the county. So, anyway, I'm here for a reason, try to make things happen.
So many people in this room agree that there's way too many government restrictions on the people. Is there anyone that agrees there's too many government restrictions on the people at all?
Of course.
No, only a couple people?
Of
Just
course.
a couple, I
Make
guess.
another one. I think that's it right there.
But
Let me make another one.
I'm sure the list is huge. But can you please give me just 2 or 3 examples of any law, statute, ordinance, rule, or restriction that you have fought hard to repeal in Charlotte County since you've been in office?
Oh, wow, I wish I had thought about that. Can you think of any? Huh? Well, I felt that we were in a position twice that we could have reduced the millage rate, and that wasn't, that was a tax issue. Yeah, no, I'm trying to think about a law or a rule or something specifically. I'm sure there's some issues, David, I can't think of. Can you think of any?
I can't think of anything we want to get rid of in this county. That's funny to say that.
One of the things we consistently find in the ordinances is there are things that are sort of out of date and should be cleaned up and updated. The whole housing issue is very complex because everybody says, yeah, we need housing. But then again, when you start talking to people, I say we need it, but I say, we'll put it by your house, and you say, yeah, we really need it, but put it over by his house, that's the reality of life, it's an NIMBY thing.
Yeah, I was going to try not to talk about the Ranchettes tonight, since the other day Kalen broached the topic. I know it's been a hot topic. You've seen many of our residents at your board meetings on numerous occasions. I've heard quite a few of your comments over the years with the Ranchettes. A lot of documentation that was told didn't exist, and we've provided it. And every time it seems like we provide documentation, the commissioners shut us down.
The what?
The commissioners shut us down. And you talk about community and trying to be a bigger community with all 5 districts. While the Ranchettes is in District 2, we feel like we have been ostracized from the county, which, hence why I'm running for office. I would like one of you commissioners, hopefully you, to commit yourself to come out, meet with the group. There's a number of us, engineers, that know what's going on out there, knowing what can be done, and under Stormwater 298 can be handled. And I'd like you to commit yourself to come out and meet personally with us to take that tour so you can see for yourself what we're talking about, because our streets are really not our issue.
Okay, I've been out there a number of times, not in the last year or 2, but I have been out there a lot, often. I know the area, and I was actually told by people, by more than one person, they're happy with it just the way that it is. And I've also been told by somebody else that they can barely get in and out of their property when it rains, that we got to do something about it.
You know why folks are telling you that it's fine out there? Because of code enforcement. They don't want code enforcement in the Ranchettes because they don't understand agricultural zoning at code enforcement. That is one of my other questions with this. Code enforcement, we're talking about this gentleman's question about liberty and the Constitution and our rights. Do you feel that the county code enforcement has overstepped its bounds with a lot of the, right up into, and I go to a lot of code enforcement hearings, right down to the multi-$1,000 fine for a flat tire in a driveway?
I was talking to the building official at 7:45 this morning on the phone, because a realtor contacted me specifically about a builder or two where there was some situations. And she said, and shared with me, and I passed that on to him, and we got into in-depth conversations, that the question was coming up, you know, are there some things happening that were inappropriate? And the complaints that I received, and I'll tell you something because I remember them, well, how could they get a CO? There's no refrigerator in there. There was no dishwasher. There was, well, you don't need those for a CO. However, the one that got me, and I got the address and I gave it to him this morning, one of the houses got a CO without a window. That's a code. That shouldn't get a CO. One of the ones.
Just got a CO with no electric.
That should not happen, and I'll tell you, if you can tell me and give me that address, I'll take the building official out there, because those things shouldn't happen. You know, again, they're not perfect. They've missed some things in my neighborhood that I know about, which amaze me, that they didn't pick up on, that they got, and they were complaint driven. So you know, things happen on that. I'd like to think that most of them are conscientious and do their job. However, they're human beings, and I have questions about some things that I don't know the answers to. But you know, they should have the highest level of integrity, and they have a job to do. And sometimes you may think they're busting your chops if they say, well, you have to have a pan under that hot water heater, and you say, well, why should I have to do it? Because it's in the garage. And they'll say, and now they say you don't have to do it all the time. I was told I had to do it, so I put the stupid pan underneath the hot water tank. But when it leaks, it's good. I'm lucky it'll go out my garage. There are some houses where it might go back into the house. You know, so I think you got to deal with an individual situation and follow through on that, And there's going to be goof ups here and there. I know there is. And you know, I've done some construction work in the town, and probably in the county, and probably 90+% of it, I got my permits and I did what I was supposed to do. And did I do something that I didn't bother getting a permit on once or twice? Yeah. And you know what I did? I way overdid it, that if I ever got caught, I would have been able to say, hey, I did it. You know, so instead of putting 6 nails in a shingle, I put 8 nails in a shingle. And instead of using ply straw, I used plywood, and I tried to do it right. But I stood in line for 2.5 hours during Charlie to get a permit. And I still wasn't anywhere near getting it.
Stephen R.
Yes, sir.
I just came up with a good question.
Can't hear you.
First of all, I appreciate you turning out tonight. I really do. I'm surprised that the cultural center hasn't come up as a question. If you read the letters to the editor, which I don't know if you do or do not, okay? It was a big popular topic right now. What is your position?
Because there's a lot happening with that.
Good.
Did you get your question out?
Yeah, that was it. Cultural center. This was it.
Tickets for a show, you canceled it.
And there's a lot to that issue that isn't there, because, all right, I'm a fan of the Cultural Center. I remember when it first opened, it was a big deal, and we needed it, okay? The issue is, part of it is we don't know what happened for the last year and a half. And I will tell you this, the mentality of the 5 commissioners you have now, and probably most of you guys in here, none of us work real good when we're given a threat. And what we were given 10 days and said, you write us a $300,000 check, or we're gonna shut down. That's what, and I've got a copy of that letter, that's what they sent us. And I know I don't react real well to that. Not my neighborhood, my friends would kick my butt if I did when I was a kid. So the reality is, that place was kept for so many, first of all, they got 20 grand. They got $190,000 in loans, that was forgiven. Well, if the building wasn't open, and if the people weren't there, how much money would it take to keep the temperature at 80 degrees and the security lights on and pay the water bill? They got $10,000 a month for 20 months, or however you want to divide it. I was surprised, you know, Mr. Carter got his salary all that time, you know, and they justify that. But there's a lot involved here. The county takes care of the outside, the county put a new roof on the building, they have a contract, they lease it for $1 a year, and they're responsible for it, and we've been supportive of it. And I know personally I have, I've tried to get meetings and stuff there and use it, and the problem is the inside's gotten a little tired. And let me give you, has anyone here been to the beach complex inside in the last 6 months or a year or so?
Today.
Oh, okay, great. You know, the beach complex is as old as that building, but if you look inside, it's got to be replaced because structurally it's in trouble, but it's pretty clean and it's kept up a little bit.
It doesn't look bad.
Exactly, that's my point. But it's as old as, it's about basically the same age as a cultural center. And their job was to maintain the inside. And so what they started doing, and I noticed it, they were bringing their prices up a little bit. And, you know, at one point they were competitive, but, you know, they brought their prices up a little bit. And if you're going to have a big function, you know, whether you're involved in a wedding or a fundraiser or something, and the price is about the same price as it is at the event center, most people were going to the cultural center. And that little place, what's it called, the 24 Club, where we used to have the Republic, and that's small and neat, but it was bright and airy, and, you know, so there's a lot of issues with it. What's going to happen, and you'll read about this in the paper real soon, the Charlotte Community Foundation, as a third party, they're going to come up with some money to keep it open for a short time. They are going to pay for a study, a feasibility study, which has to be done, because in all honesty, some of the things that were happening there in the 70s and 80s, people are doing different ways now, whether it's virtually, or they do it online, or they do it some other way, because we didn't have the computers back when that place was built. So, but there is a need, you know, and the socialization aspect is very important for people to get together too. But the county, we were just an innocent bystander, and everybody blames it on us. And by the way, believe it or not, we had no mechanism that we could, if we wanted to be held up, we had no mechanism without transparency and public meetings and hearings to write a $300,000 or a $3 check. You know, we've got to go through the process, and it frustrates us, but we do it. So there's a lot more to it, but I think you're going to see some stuff in the paper talking about how we can try and save it and make it work. And I will tell you this, I've had at least 3 or 4 different restaurants, one a catering service, a couple restaurants that want to rent it to run a restaurant. I've been talked to about an exercise club. A couple people have suggested to me that the YMCA could get in there, and, you know, the facility needs some updating inside, it's old. But I think in some way it'll continue. But when our first response, and the county administrator did this, when they first asked for the $300,000, we said, would you share, what are you going to use the money for, and how are you going to, and they wouldn't give us a plan or a response, they just wanted the $300,000 that they were going to shut down. And I don't know all the people on their board, they're good guys. Steve Carter seems like a nice guy, but I know I called him several times in the last 6 months to have events, and he told me we weren't ready yet. So we're trying to encourage having something positive happen.
So I'm learning the landscape down here in Florida, pretty familiar with politics in Connecticut. All of these positions in Connecticut, from Board of Ed right up to our commissioners, with the exception of a first selectman or a mayor in Connecticut, in most municipalities, is an elected position, but unpaid. I'd like to know what you are paid for your commissioner position and what the retirement is, please.
Okay. I will share with you, first of all, my running for office has nothing to do with the compensation I get for it. When I was in the state legislature in Rhode Island for 10 years, the compensation, and it changed about 10 years ago, was $5 a day, a maximum of $300 a year. I will admit they did feed us on occasion, and one of my colleagues once said I was the only one that worked for $5 a day and came out ahead. But you know, it was considered an honorarium, and a couple of years we had budget problems, and we met more than, you know, more than the normal 60 days. We didn't get 310, you know, we got the $300 a year. When I started on the board, the salary was, the commissioner's salary is based on population. I believe the salary when I started was 56, and I think it's about 70 now. And I will say,
You're saying you don't do it for the money, so is that Are you
Excuse
donating?
me?
You said you don't do it for the compensation, so are you donating that money back to the?
I donate, and this is a personal thing, I donate probably about 20 some odd % of what I make to local charities. You'll be seeing recently, next,
$70,000
soon.
might help the cultural center.
I'm gonna be giving $5,000 to the park. I have my check at home for United Way, and I'm very comfortable with what I do. But let me also share this. I know the hours that I put in, I know the effort that I put in, and your constitutional officers get paid twice what I do. Now, maybe they're worth more than I am, maybe they work harder than I do. That's the reality of the situation. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about the school boards, particularly with the curmudgeon group, and those things. But those are the numbers. On the retirement, I don't know. I know I put some into it, and the county puts a percentage in. I don't recall what they are. But again, it's all public record. You can find it. Yeah. But that's not. That's not why I'm there, because I have this fantasy that I could make a difference and make this place better. And frankly, lately I'm thinking I've wasted my whole life on occasion.
Question is, do you believe that good management of public funds and proper fiscal austerity is within the ability of Charlotte County government so that the 1% supplemental tax is not permanently necessary? That is, do you believe that the argued necessity of a 1% tax is indicative of Charlotte County elected officials being unable to manage expenses within a budget funded by current tax expenditures, and that the promotion of the 1% tax is a one-sided promotion where the government promotes it and the other side does not get, at taxpayer expense, and the other side does not get to argue for the case against it? Okay. We have a 1% tax. Is it going to be permanent? Is it an indication that the budget that we have in the county is not being able to be funded with taxpayer money, so that you have to have the 1% tax to supplement?
I can do that. First of all, no matter what you do as an elected person, you never please everyone. Twice I've tried to reduce the millage rate, and I couldn't get a second. And I actually had some people say, "What are you going to do that for? We won't be able to pay for everything." I do support the penny tax. We vote on it every so many years. Part of the reason I like that tax better than other taxes is because a good percentage of it comes from outside of Charlotte County, and and about 27% of it comes from people that visit, which means we can get things done in our community with other people that are passing through or visiting that help us. Part of the problem is General Development had a job to do when they came here, and they wanted to sell lots, and they were great at it. We still have, with all this development, 200,000 vacant lots in this county, and we have no way of dealing with them. That's the problem, and it's sort of part of the albatross, one of the challenges we have.
I hope you will continue your support of the airport so that these unknown investors who swooped in and tried to get us
You know where I'm at with that.
to turn it over to them, and we would all become bobbleheads. So I hope that you would continue to support.
And you've been there a long time, and I'm not going to live long enough to have the Charlotte County service that you have. But let me say one thing. You remember when I first came on, the airport authority wasn't talking to the county commission, because they were arguing over the name, they were arguing with the city. And I'm a team player. I played 3 sports. I was never captain, never the best player, but I think it's important to move ahead. We work together. And who would you say in the last 10 years has been the strongest supporter of the airport that you can think of?
You're there every meeting.
Who's the strongest supporter and works with the airport? Yeah. And because, and I believe that you guys should run that, and people should keep their noses out of it, and you're doing a great job, and I've said that, and our board has said that.
this might be a little long-winded, but I'm going to do it as fast as I can. During your tenure as commissioner, there's been a push for clean water, which has resulted in several sewer projects. Some were not large projects, but the major projects were East-West Spring Lake, El Javine, Ackerman, which is in progress now, and then extending to the O'Hara areas. We've been led to believe that water quality should be improved with sewers. However, this article that was in the Sun that I have, you've probably seen this week, quoted Commissioner Constance as having said, waiting months and even years to find out, oh, by the way, you've been impaired for 3 years because it came out that the harbor is impaired right now. How is that informing us? What's next? Tell the people that you just haven't hooked up or built enough sewers yet. When will you admit that properly maintained septic systems that are not in the backyards on waterfront properties are not damaging the waterways and the harbor?
Did you get it?
Well, it's the sewer issue that led Susan to hate me and try and do everything she could do to destroy me. But water is our most valuable. We both know that. I'm fine. That was last year. You know, I'm okay. You can help out if you want. Our most valuable resource is our water. And this is not, you know, this isn't New England. Septic systems don't work here. Most of them. A few do. Most don't work. I mean, if you want, almost any of us, if you want to put up a fence, dig in the ground 2 feet, we're going to hit water. Septics don't work. They don't work here. They worked in Rhode Island, great. I had cesspools, I had septic. I had a cesspool you could put a Volkswagen in because it was as big as this room, and it worked. But here we know that it pollutes the water. And let me tell you about the courage, and I'll tell you exactly what happened on the board. And I'll say it out loud because I don't have any problem telling the truth. When I first came on the board, I was only there a few days. Ray Sandrock came out and says, you know, we had a plan approved in the county 10 or 12 years ago to put sewers in, and the board hasn't wanted to discuss it. I said, I'll discuss it. Why not? We paid like a couple $100,000, and it said pretty much that Charlotte County at one point or other had to be sewered. This is like 25 years ago we did this study. I don't know what Chris said, but 3 people said 3 of the commissioners didn't want to talk about it. And interestingly enough, there were 3 commissioners that were coming running up for re-election. They didn't want to talk about it. So we never dealt with it. So right after they were elected, Sandrock came around and said, you want to talk about sewers? I said yes. And I assume at least 2 of my other colleagues said yes, and we moved ahead on sewers. And I was, you know, by the anti-sewer people, the people that were pro-septic, I was, you know, viciously attacked throughout the election.
I'm not trying to beat the sewers to death. I just want to make one point about it.
That was years ago. I'm okay with it.
Okay, well, the point is, do you agree that sewers cause more damage with spills than a failing septic system that needs to be repaired?
Not at all, and I'll tell you why. And a lot of the stuff, what got me is a lot of the stuff you would send to us, and Kathleen too. You know, we get the stuff about a sewer break, and it happens. Olean, you know why we're taking so long to put that together next year? Because we found such a mess in the ground, and it was never reported. There were pipes to nowhere that general development had. There was stuff that wasn't connected. So 2 things about this board you have to know. We're never going to be perfect. And there is absolutely nothing we would do that would make everybody in this room happy. However, what we do, we try to look down the road 10, 15, 20 years, and we try to do it right. We try to do it right. And part of the problem we had up there with the issue, but some of the stuff, you know, the reality is, and it's sewers work. There's going to be a problem at some time with the sewer line, but sewers work. It helps protect our water. And a lot of the stuff that you guys would send us would be from Minneapolis or Detroit or Chicago. You know it because I read all of it, and it was right. Hold on, let me finish. Let me finish. But when the sewer line broke, 1,500 miles away. We don't know how it was put in. We don't know if there was an earthquake. We don't know what caused it. We don't know why. But, you know, and those things do happen. But the reality is sewers are better for all of us in the long run. It helps protect our water. Is there gonna be a problem now and then? Absolutely. Is one of us gonna have a car accident sometime this year? Probably. Hopefully it's just a fender bender. But those things happen. But overall, when you look at the big picture, and I don't like paying for it any more than I do, I hate the concept, if I say, you know, why I have to pay for my sewer, which was there, but why I have to pay for my sewer if I go and tinkle at the restaurant or in the office and I don't use it. But, you know, that's the way they do it. So, you know, I pay my taxes just like the rest of you guys. But the sewers work in the long run, so they work, they're better.
We have a sheriff, third term now, the biggest, in my opinion, police state we've ever had. We were founded on freedom, not policing for profit. He has the most out-of-control budget we have ever had in this county. You have the right to vote no. Why didn't you? I do not feel safe. He is policing for profit. I don't feel safe. He says it's to keep you safe.
Can you define that for me and help me out?
We were founded on freedom. We killed the red coat British police for freedom. And now all we do is we get pulled over constantly for victimless crimes. They're literally banning that in cities and states now because it's out of control. It's stop and frisk, which New York got rid of because it's illegal. So if you could answer that.
I'll share a Bronx story with you. I was beat up by the cops 4 times. I deserved it 3. So the one I remember was the 4th where I really was innocent and I shouldn't have got my butt kicked. And they were good in New York because they knew where to grab you and where to hit you and not leave a mark. Public safety is a critical issue for us. The problem, you know, and it's a priority because that's why people come here, because we're safe. And I know there's individual incidents because I hear about them with my friends now and then. There are things that frustrate me when the law enforcement people can't deal with some things that I'd like to think they should be dealing with. The problem is, and I believe it only happened once, and it may have been Sheriff Watch, I'm not sure, I don't think it was Cameron. We don't have the final say on that. So we try real hard to work with the sheriff. Publicly, I have been supportive of the job he's doing overall. I wanted to see us enlarge the Marine Division, because I think we don't have enough safety or coverage on the waterfront, and we have so much water. I will tell you this, while I don't believe I have ever said a negative word in my life about an opponent or a colleague. However, when you and I are in the office and just say, what do you think about my tie? I might tell you, you know, on a one-on-one, but it's just not the way that I function or work. I think the sheriff has a generous budget. I agree with you. I don't know what happens out there day to day. Every once in a while, I'll hear a horror story which boggles my mind, and I'll call him and I'll try and get an answer. And more often than not, he comes up with something that's acceptable to me. In terms of his saying why that happened, and there've been several dozen over the years, because I'll get hold of him and I will talk to him. But I don't know the answer to that. I do know this, that people come here because we're considered a safe community, and I think most people feel relatively comfortable here. This is a crazy time we're in this world. I mean, people do crimes, they're allowed to walk in the store. I mean, I remember the guy in Wars grabbing me because I was stealing a 10-cent soldier. And the worst thing was he didn't call the cops, he called my mother. Had he called the cops, I would have been better off because I was like 7 or 8 years old. But, you know, now they can walk in and steal $1,000 worth of stuff, whether they walk in this restaurant or walk in the supermarket. We don't have that here. So I think law and order is important. But I think it has to be fair and just. So I could go on. And again, any of you here, I will tell you, I'd be happy at any time to sit down and chat with you. Because I'm not brief.
do you think taxes are too high? Anybody?
Yeah, you think?
One person? Everyone else? Okay.
Let me say this.
Wait, it's not about taxes then.
I want to comment on taxes. I like to think that we always think taxes are too high. The thing that amazes me, and I just got my tax bill, and it went up more than I thought it was going to go up. But if I had that same house where I used to be, I don't want to even think about what it would cost me to heat it in the winter. The taxes would probably be about 4 or 5 times higher.
So what?
I know, we can always compare against worse places,
I don't
but
care what they are in
they're,
Connecticut, I don't live in
they're
Connecticut.
high because of spending.
But I think relatively, our taxes are fair.
You were here in 1996, right?
No,
Oh, you weren't?
no, sir.
Okay. You were here in 2007, though, when you were working on the master plan?
No, sir.
2007?
No, sir.
Oh, okay, all right.
No, the last time I ran for office outside of here was in 1990. I ran for lieutenant governor of Rhode Island. Then I moved here. In my infinite wisdom, I closed on my house a week before Charlie.
Got it. All right, good. I got that. Just to let you know, I did the book recently, and a friend of mine's father had retired here, and he saved every Sun paper for the first couple of years he was here. And in there was a supplement to the Sun in 1996. And apparently the populists got together and they formed what was called the Assembly of 1976, and they met in Punta Gorda. It was called the Assembly of 1976. And their findings were they felt there was no connection to accounting. They felt a lack of identity. And they went on and on about this, and they gave those findings to the, alerted the county commissioners that that wasn't satisfactory and that should work, as role models to try to bring that sense of identity of place and connectedness. And ironically, and later I found the county had their own assembly in 2007 in preparation for the new master plan. And they had appointed people to sit on a committee and that assembly. And that committee came up with exactly the same findings in 2007. So 11 years apart, people are still saying that there is no sense of community and identity here.
Question? Do you have a question in that?
Well, that's a follow-on to what I was saying.
That's more of a comment.
Yeah, actually.
No, it's a follow-on about community.
Okay, it's not a question.
We have a lot of little small pockets in the county, in neighborhoods, and obviously there's a sense of community there. You have it in big cities where you had you had the Italian section or the Irish section. Yes, because people go where they were comfortable, and would cling together and be together. Oh, one comment I want to make on the sales tax, which I think is real important, and also with those meetings. The sales tax recommendations that the commission reviews and considers are made by citizens. They're made by people from the community, from the county, who volunteer, and that's where we pick them, to be on that group. And I will tell you this, I listen to them, I appreciate that input, and I believe my colleagues do as well. And we may not have the exact same priority that they have, but all the sales tax projects were vetted by citizen groups who met for weeks and went over them and said, this is a good idea, that's a bad idea, maybe we should add that, maybe we shouldn't add this, and then that was presented to us. And that happens even with the Marine Advisory Committee when we talk about using the voter improvement funds and stuff like that, because I've been sitting there. And the community, is very much involved, and I know I do, and again, I'd like to thank my colleagues who, we appreciate that kind of input. There's a lot of expertise and involvement, but we don't make arbitrary decisions out of the air. I will also tell you this, because the attorney was mentioned a couple times. The attorney and I do not agree probably 25% of the time. And she's actually, and I tease her about it, she's had to admit at least 5 or 6 times that I was right about some issues on a legal issue, which I felt good about in the last 10 years. But we don't disagree. She is very conservative. She's very protective of the county, because we're always getting sued for something. Go sue City Hall. It happens all the time. Some of the stuff is absurd. Some of the stuff bothers me. I refused. I was the only one that voted against paying somebody once who had had 2 DUIs, and he was coming on back on a package store, and he said he broke his leg because there was a crack in the sidewalk where he fell off his bicycle and no one was there to witness it. And I don't remember the numbers, but we ended up giving him like 15 grand because it would have cost the county 75 or 100 to go to court. You know, so people sue us all the time and we deal with that. So I don't know if they sue the airport as much as they do us. But yeah, you had a couple of issues that I can recall back.
A couple of years ago, maybe less than that, I joined and volunteered for the Sidewalks, Street and Drainage group because I wanted to see what it was all about. I ended up resigning after 3 quarters because of being responsible for a granddaughter. But I had suggested to them that, well, when you build a road, put a sidewalk on one side of the road. We've got school kids walking down the middle of our road. We've had people from out of town renting the house next door to us, and 2 women and a child in a stroller were hit and taken to the hospital. It's not safe, and I walked to the bus stop with my granddaughter because I don't think she has the attention span.
She must be big now. I remember when she was only that big.
She's in 2nd grade, but she doesn't have the attention span to watch for traffic. So.
You know, it's interesting because at the Y the other morning, there were 2 people complaining, why are you putting all these stupid sidewalks all over the place? You know, there'll be his name is Eddie, he complains about everything. But I told Eddie, and he rides around and looks at stuff and says, how come you don't pick up those snipe signs? You know, I said, that's really not my job. But, you know, so, and again, it's, you know, the sidewalks are coming out from the schools. And, you know, basically, we're working on that, and we were mandated to do a lot of them. But we do have a plan to put sidewalks in. And the reality is, you know, we're not going to, probably the Ranchettes will have sidewalks in 20, 25 years after the roads go in. You know, it's going to happen, Susan. It's going to happen sooner or later.
I just thought in combination with the sewers, it would have been.
Well, what we try and do now, when we dig up a road, and we come in, we try and do everything at once. And that's what happened up at Harbor and Olean. We had a mess when we opened it up, and it cost us an extra $1 million, and we've gone over the whole thing, but we're doing it right. But I got to tell you, when we get a pipe breaks, you know, and it happens on occasion, we're amazed at what happened underneath the ground, and they always, inevitably, we hear all the time, they find stuff we didn't even know was there.
Is there anybody in the county government or in any capacity, probably not, but I'm going to ask it anyway, that has any idea how many illegals they're sending here from Biden? If you don't know, that's okay.
I absolutely have no clue, and the problem that frustrates me, I do have my opinion, and I'll talk about it, but there ain't nothing I can do about it from where I'm at. But it absolutely boggles my mind, how we're giving our sovereignty away. Sovereignty, you know, we all came here from somewhere else.
They don't
I'm
want
a
to
Heinz.
I know they don't want to tell anybody.
Yeah, and then we want to give people 400 grand? Give me a break. I mean, how stupid is that?
You know, I did
But we can't, see, people will complain to me about stuff like that, like we have some influence. And my guess is we're 100% on the same track on that. And it frustrates the heck out of me when I see what happens. I'll tell you something that some people may or may not know. I was offered a job in Washington by President Bush. And it would have been about 4.5 times, 5 times what I was making in Rhode Island. And it was with the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And they had me come to Washington for 2 days. The first day I spent at HUD was really great. And I was supposed to be at the White House till noon, then they were going to take me out to fly back to Rhode Island. By 10:30, I knew I didn't want to work in Washington. And it was nothing against the president. You know, I've had the chance, some people say I have an opponent who brags about meeting Donald Trump and interviewing him, and whatever. Well, I've met 6 presidents, and Trump was right, it is a swamp. and the non-elected bureaucrats run a lot of what happens in Washington, not our elected officials. And on occasion it happens, we see it happening a little bit at the county level. But I think we have 5 strong commissioners that usually stand up, and at one point or another we voice our opinions. And even on occasion, hopefully we're right.
I recently called a homeless shelter, and I have about 400 voter registrations from the homeless shelter.
That would concern me. By the way, the young lady left. I contributed about 5 years ago. We contributed a lot, which probably would sell for about $70,000 now, to Habitat for them to build a house on. So she was wondering about what I do with the money that I make, but because I believe it's important to give back. And in all honesty, if I won the lottery, it wouldn't change my life any. But my church would have a Christian education building. The Homeless Coalition would have another facility. The YMCA would have a gym, and I have a whole list of stuff what would happen. And my kids would salivate with the balance till they drop dead, you know.
But do we have a rainy day fund in Charlotte County?
Yes.
Yeah, we have, yeah,
I
we do.
It's called the CAFR, isn't it? CAFR.
No, well, no, we keep we keep so much in reserves for an emergency, whether it's a hurricane or whatever, or a plane's gonna land on the bridge, or we're gonna get a sinkhole in the middle of 41, or, you know, there's always the unknown thing. The one thing, there are a couple of good things I can say about the county, and people may or may not be aware of it. I think it's our hurricane prep that we do year-round that put us in a position to try and deal with the virus, the COVID thing. And not that anyone really knew what we were doing, because it was all brand new, it was unique, unknown experience. But I think within 24 hours we had an emergency place set up. We had actually had gowns and masks and water and stuff delivered to it, you know, because, you know, we have that hurricane prep they do. The same with the firefighters. You know, I've stopped by stations, people say, yeah, they just sit around, eat and talk till they have an emergency. You know, and I've been there and I've seen the guys blindfolded dragging hoses through cardboard boxes, practicing. And, you know, we all think that we spend a lot of money on the fire department and the sheriff's department until we have that emergency. And they haven't had one in the last several years. One of the neatest things that I was honored to go to as a commissioner, they have what they call the Phoenix and the Stork Awards. And it was a fun thing, but they had a dinner once a year for the firefighters. And it was amazing. There were 5 or 6 or 7 that were recognized one year for literally saving people's lives, and another 4 or 5 that gave babies, you know, they delivered babies, and, you know, those are sort of the good things. So you try and be prepared for the emergency and the unknown, but we don't know, and no one had any clue about this COVID thing or how to deal with it. And the great thing about COVID, we have 340 million experts in this country of ours, because everybody's an expert on COVID. The thing I want to leave, the thing, yeah, you know, I have my political views as well, but the thing I want to leave you with, I think I bring an experiential and academic background to this position that no one could match, and I think my work ethic isn't going to be beaten either at this point in time. And I can't promise to do anything other than the one campaign promise I've always made, and I will continue to make, is that I will take whatever abilities or experience that I have and work to the best of my ability to do the best job I can. But I'm also been around long enough that I know no matter what I do, you don't make everybody happy. I try to do the best I can. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for coming.
He told me